Thank you so much. And, thank you everybody for tuning in today. Happy Friday. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you about this. And, from what I hear so far, the sessions have been fantastic. So I'm going to talk to you about Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, something I work on just about every day here in my day job here at Microsoft. And it's an amazing product. Unfortunately, I would love to spend all day with you on it because there's so much to talk about, but we only have an hour. So I'm going to go through some of my favorite capabilities of this thing, and I'm going to stay true to how this can really help to secure your endpoints, basically without a VPN. So for those of you who know me, I like to go through slides, but I also am very demo heavy. So I have a few slides I'm going to go through, but I am going to jump right into demos, and that's where we're going to spend the majority of the time today. So just a little bit about me before we get started. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a senior security architect at Microsoft. I work in our partner organization, so I help our partners like Invoke and some other partners out there on this call build security practices, take our security technology to market, and then help them basically be successful. And so one of the best parts about my job is really getting to work with all of you on this call and everybody out there in the community, and it's a lot of fun. So again, thank you for having me. All right, so let's get into this. I want to kick off with just level setting. I'm sure everybody here can agree with this slide. Protecting your endpoint, it is hard, and if you don't think it's hard, that's something that we should probably talk about, because this is whack-a-mole, right? It's an ever-evolving thing, and as threats and breaches and things out there get more sophisticated and technology advances, you're still going to have to be playing catch up. And so you have to worry about everything from malware to ransomware to 0 days to fileless attacks. One of my favorites here is vulnerabilities, just because of all of the attack surface that you have on your machine and all of those third-party applications and line of business apps and making sure they're patched. This can be quite cumbersome, and it can be pretty difficult, right? And one of the reasons that makes it so difficult is oftentimes this is not done by the same team of individuals at an organization. Sometimes big and small, right? You might have people that do client configuration management, your SCCM admin, your Intune admin, and that team. And then you have a security team that has to worry about the security posture of these endpoints, among other things like monitoring them with a SIEM and maybe an operations center. And then you have other teams that have to worry about application packaging and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of moving parts there. And sometimes those teams don't necessarily talk to each other. And I'm sure some of you might agree with me on that. But over on the far right side here of this visual, there's a lot of capabilities there that you also have to worry about to help make sure that you're staying well protected, right? I got to make sure I go out and understand what assets are in the environment. What machines are out there with devices, Windows, Mac, Linux, mobile devices, what's installed in them, are they patched, are they not? It's a mess, right? And it's something that we've been dealing with for a very, very long time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. And that's where Defender ATP really comes into the picture. And again, I could spend all day on this. In fact, I could probably spend several days on this topic because there's so much here. This is one of the fastest growing products we have here at Microsoft because of its breadth and depth across protecting an endpoint. And so it takes all of those challenges and it applies automation, and it does simplify it. Now, look, nothing's ever going to be 100% effective and 100% secure. There's always going to be that whack-a-mole, as I mentioned before. But how can we make it more automated for you as an admin? How can we make it more expensive for an attacker to try to knock down our layered defense? And that's where Defender ATP really shines. And so there's 6 main components when you look at it, and actually there's 7. The first one is threat and vulnerability management. I'll get into this in a demo in just a moment, but this is allowing you to go out there and discover among your Windows population what apps are installed, if those apps are patched, what kind of configuration drift there might be, and I'll get more into that in a moment. Attack surface reduction. This is probably, I don't know, I have a lot of favorite features here. This is one of the favorite features I have because of being able to actually secure an endpoint. Because when you run an Excel spreadsheet that, for example, has a macro in it, that macro could be doing nasty things like trying to do PowerShell calls to go out and download some malicious software and get it installed, or try to contact a command control server to then go out and download software. ASR can help to actually mitigate that, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Next generation protection, endpoint detection response, things that most of us are familiar with, but being able to actually automatically respond to an attack while it's happening. Automatic investigation and remediation. I'll show you what that's all about in threat experts. Probably the biggest thing here that I love is the centralized configuration and administration. It's all done from one single tool. And that makes it actually really easy. But then the APIs that come along with it make it extensible. So whether you're somebody that loves to do Power BI reporting and building dashboards for your executives and for your leadership team, or if you want to hook this into your configuration management solution for the enterprise, or hook it into a ticketing system, or you want to do anything with it, those APIs are there to allow you to be extensible. So that's pretty awesome. In terms of platform coverage, something I really like about this is that Microsoft is growing the coverage. Presently here, you can see on this slide, we support a vast variety here of operating systems: Windows 10, Windows 8.1, Windows 7, and then of course Server 2019, Server 2016, Server 2012, and actually 2008 is also supported, but although that is end of life. And then as far as cross-platform, I'm really excited about this. When Defender ATP first launched, it was supported on Mac, but through a third party. Recently, we launched a first-party client that runs on Mac OS, and that's pretty awesome. And so we're making investments there to make sure that platform has coverage. And then also Linux as well. And then Android and iOS. And even at the RSA conference back in February, we actually made an announcement that we're bringing some first-party clients to Android and iOS. So basically coverage across the ecosystem there and across the environment. That's what's mostly exciting about this. Okay, so let's jump into our first demo here. I want to talk about threat and vulnerability management. This is pretty awesome. This is something that, frankly, I consider low-hanging fruit. I consider this a fundamental. And kind of my call to action for everybody on this meeting is coming out of this, whether you own Defender ATP or not, kick the tires on it. If you don't own it, go ahead and sign up for a trial and check out some of these basic features like threat and vulnerability management. You might see some value there and see how you can tie it into your existing operations. So let's go ahead and take a look at threat and vulnerability management. And to do that, we're going to jump into demo mode here. And I'm going to bring up one of my demo environments, and we'll zoom in here a little bit for you. So this is Defender ATP. Just a couple things before we get into threat and vulnerability management. If I go down here to settings and I go to onboarding, this is where I go to onboard those devices. And obviously I could do things like Intune and SCCM to get those devices onboarded. And what's interesting about Windows 10 is it's actually agentless. It's the capabilities built in the operating system. You basically need a license, you need to onboard it to then light up that capability. And that brings up a whole interesting set of other conversation points we could talk about sometime, but really exciting there. And then of course, here's all the different platforms I just talked through. So over on the left side here, we have this little castle icon for threat and vulnerability management. And when I click on dashboard, this gives me a snapshot of what's happening across my client population within the environment. So let's talk through a little bit of this. So this exposure score. This exposure score is pretty awesome. It just gives me an idea on a scale of 0 to 100, how exposed is the environment, the client environment. And right now I'm sitting around a 40 out of 100. So as you can see there in the scale, it's kind of medium exposure. We look at things like, and using machine learning to understand this, but we look at what's the likelihood of that device to get breached based on the apps that are installed in it, based on the number of vulnerabilities in those apps and in the operating system that may not be patched. We look at the configuration of that client. We look at a lot of those different variables to then understand at scale across the environment, what level of exposure are you absolutely at. I love that because it's a nice metric that the team can try to march towards. And of course, it's something you can reflect back up to your management. The second one here is the score. So if you're familiar with Secure Score in Office 365 and Secure Score in Azure, same type of concept here. And what this is saying is that if I go out and I configure all of these security controls that are within Windows 10 and the controls that are available to me, I'd have a max score of 738. I'm sitting at 387 because I haven't done all of it. I'm about halfway there. And so again, it's a nice metric I can march towards. And then I do get points based on the type of control, and I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. Exposure distribution. So these are things like what type of devices are in the environment that have outstanding updates that need to be applied, and just how exposed are those. And I'll show you more about that here in just a moment. But if I could call your attention down here when we scroll towards the bottom, I want to call your attention to top vulnerable software. We've made some investments in this product to go out and discover the software that's installed in these endpoints. Now remember, this is built into the operating system. And so it gives us a wide variety of visibility to what's happening. And here you can see in my running processes, I have 2 processes there for Windows Defender ATP. It looks like we need to change the name there to Microsoft Defender ATP, but those are the processes running, and it's gathering telemetry from these devices, such as the installed applications, and it's reporting it back. Now, this is my lab. I don't have a whole lot happening here. But what I do find interesting is that we tell you the number of weaknesses. And here I can see that I do have some OSs and some apps that have some weaknesses tied to it. So for example, if we pull up an app in my environment like Chrome, and we open up the software page, from here I can see a number of different talking points around that piece of software in my environment. But if I go to security recommendations, Microsoft is recommending a few different things to me. It's recommending that I go out and update Chrome. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And it's recommending some configuration changes that should be made on Chrome to basically make sure this is more secure and adhere to best practices. And for each one of these that I do get a set of points that get added to my secure score. And so if I click on one of these items, it will tell me a little bit about that item, the risk that it presents to the environment. And then from here, I can see which devices need to be taken care of. And I know for a lot of you on the call, we have some SCCM admins and Intune admins and configuration management admins. So this might get you kind of excited when you look at that. Now, I want to keep going through this here a little bit. So again, for this piece of software, we've gone out and identified that based on the version of Chrome that's running, we've identified some CVEs. We've identified some vulnerabilities. And when I click on one of those CVEs, it tells me about what it is. Of course, the reference I can go and look up on the MITRE website. And then, again, I can see which devices that CVE is exposed on. And so if I click on install devices, again, here's the devices that have Chrome running. Here's the version of Chrome that's running. And then again, I can also see all the versions. So if this was a large enterprise, obviously this would be a long list. And then from there, I can start to prioritize and figure out, all right, what do I need to take care of first? Now, if we go back to security recommendations, one of the recommendations is update Google Chrome. So there's a couple of different avenues I can go down, right? If I'm on SCCM or Intune or another configuration management solution, obviously I would go out there, package up Google Chrome, get the MSI pushed out, and get that latest version updated on those client endpoints, right? Or maybe I'm using the GPO associated with Google Chrome and configure it to automatically update. But there's some other methods here that if I click on remediation options, we've made some investments in the product where we can do what we call open a ticket in Intune. And what this does is this dispatches a ticket to Intune, and then my Intune admin can then pick up that ticket and go off and execute it and get that app updated. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to assign this a priority of high because Chrome is used in the environment. It's a web browser. We want to make sure it's up to date. And we're going to tell it the due date is we're going to make this guy work over the weekend. So we're going to tell him it's due Monday. And then we're going to submit the request. And so it's going to submit the ticket to Intune. And then what we're going to do is open up Intune or Endpoint Manager, and we're going to go to Endpoint Security and then Security Tasks. And then here is where I'm going to be able to see those tickets. So I've already submitted 2 different tickets. Let me zoom in just a little bit for you. And here I can see 2 tickets on Chrome and another ticket on Windows. So if I click on one of these tickets, it tells me a little bit about it. I need to update Chrome to the latest version to mitigate 6 known vulnerabilities. Here's the devices that are impacted. So as the Intune admin, I know what those are, and then I can see remediation steps. And as a good Intune admin, I would go out to apps here, and then I would package up Chrome and get it pushed out. Or if I'm in co-management here, I'd go out to SCCM and get that pushed out. And then when I click on accept, I can type my notes. Yep, we'll get it done over the weekend here. and then this will now be accepted. And then if I go back to Defender ATP as the security admin, I would then be able to see the status of that ticket. Here's one for Windows 10. Again, noting that we need to update Windows 10. It's the latest version to mitigate some vulnerabilities across these two devices. And again, same deal. And then now this would be reflected in the Defender ATP portal. So this is great when you have a little bit of a larger environment that has separate teams, and it allows you to communicate with those teams and make sure everybody's on the same page, being able to see updates and being able to see status. So if we go back here to Defender ATP, we're going to go back to the castle here. We're going to go back to software inventory. And again, you can see all the different pieces of software that's installed in these endpoints. And again, if there's any vulnerabilities associated with them, it'll be noted here. So for example, on Windows 10, if we open up the software page, it looks like I have a few clients in my environment that are out of date. And so again, I could see security recommendations, I could see what those vulnerabilities are, and then I could create those tickets out to the Intune admin and get those corrected. And then I could even see what updates are missing. So check it out, I need to update my lab here. Looks like the June 2020 updates aren't installed yet. Okay, so let's go back to Threat and Vulnerability Management, and we're gonna click on Dashboard. And I wanna show you something else I'm pretty excited about. And actually, before we do that, check it out. Here's those remediation activities. And now I can click on these and view the progress from the Intune admin. Okay, something else I'm really excited about with this dashboard is the top exposed devices. Even if I was running this as an assessment, or maybe I'm just doing a trial and I onboarded a few endpoints to kind of kick the tires on it, here I can see really at a glance what devices in the environment are exposed. And so let's click on this A9 one here and go out to it. And this is going to bring me to the device page, and it's going to show me a lot of information here. It's going to tell me the risk level based on how we've identified it as being risky, and there's an algorithm to that I'll explain more in a moment. I can see who, from a user perspective, is logging into it, and then I have some tabs available to me. So here's all the alerts on that device. So yeah, this is a pretty risky device and exposed, and look what's happening. We got some ransomware running. We've got a Mimikatz tool running for credential theft. There's Wannacry trying to communicate with a C2 server. I mean, a lot of nasty stuff here. Somebody's trying to access YouTube. Some nasty stuff is going on here. So of course, we're going to tag the risk level. And if I go to timeline, this is pulling the event log from the Windows endpoint. And so I could actually go back in time all the way up to 6 months and pull up events on that endpoint. And check it out, in the upper right-hand corner here, let me zoom in for you. You see those little chevrons? If you hover over the chevron, I can actually filter on a specific event. So here's where we discovered Mimikatz was being used. And Mimikatz is a credential theft tool. And when I click on that chevron, it's going to take me directly to that entry in the event log of where it detected it. And then I could do some correlation here. I could see, okay, what else was happening at that same time. If I go to security recommendations for this endpoint, Microsoft has gone out and made recommendations. And let's see, how many do we have here? We have quite a few, probably over 50 recommendations to go out and better secure this endpoint. So it's going to be things like, hey, let's update the software, update Windows, but also turn on some of these security features that are built into the operating system to try to mitigate any risk there. And then I can also do a number of different things, like I can isolate the device, which actually cuts off network communication, but it still allows it to communicate with the Defender ATP service. And I could also allow like Outlook and Teams, so I could communicate with that end user if I wanted to, but this could be useful if I'm doing an investigation. So let's go back to our Threat and Vulnerability Management dashboard. The last thing I want to show you here is the security recommendations on the far right. So in my environment, Microsoft has customized its recommendations to say you've got 69 recommendations that if you do those recommendations, it will increase your score and lower your exposure. And I can go out here to view those recommendations in detail. And of course, they're updating things, but let's pick a few here that, well, here's some attack surface reduction rules, like being able to prevent JavaScript or VB script from launching downloadable executable content. And when I click on that recommendation, it's going to explain all about it, what it is. It's going to tell me what devices need that recommendation, what my score would be if I were to do this, the impact of that. And then again, I can do those remediation options cut a ticket to the Intune admin and tell them to go out and take care of that. All right, so really exciting stuff here with threat and vulnerability management. We haven't even really gone into the product yet. This is just, once I onboard devices, that telemetry starts coming in. But this gives me the visibility that I need, especially this vulnerable software. I find a lot of value in that. The next thing I want to show you is I'm going to click on dashboards, and we're going to go to threat analytics. So Microsoft has something called the Intelligence Security Graph, and this is made up of all 120 of our security products, and also our digital crimes unit, and a ton of other sources, even working with third parties and our partners out there in the security industry to understand what threats are out there in the world, catalog those threats, and then when you onboard endpoints into Defender ATP, going out there and automatically identifying, are there any known threats in your environment? So I'm going to switch to a different environment here where we actually have some live production data. And here in threat analytics, out of 71 threats that we're aware of out there in the world, there's 2 threats that are currently present in my environment. Now, one's a simulation. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but one's a real one. Adwin-Rat lands using DDE. And when I click on this, Microsoft has done some amazing work here to write up a nice white paper all about that threat. And this is great bedtime reading material. But I'm kind of a geek. I love to read this stuff because it explains what that threat is, possible mitigations, some great referencing material here if you want to go read more about that threat. And then over on the right side here, I can see which devices have that threat. And then I can see what recommendations Microsoft has to mitigate that threat. And you can see this recommendation's pretty easy. Turn on Defender built into Windows and turn on these 3 features. And this will start to automatically mitigate that threat. So this is a huge value. Again, if you're using Defender ATP, or if you're doing a trial of it, or if you just want to kick the tires in your lab, immediately onboard a machine and then pull up threat analytics and see what you find. You might find something interesting, and let's cross our fingers you don't find anything. But this is pretty awesome. Just being able to see at a glance within a single click what known threats are actually out there in my environment, and then how I can actually start mitigating those in real time. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is we're gonna go to my lab here for a moment, and I want to talk about something built into Windows 10 called Block at First Sight. And I recently did a video out there on this. If you follow me on YouTube, you might have seen this, but I think this is pretty important. Again, this is a low-hanging fruit feature in my opinion. It's a fundamental thing. And so built into Windows Defender in Windows 10, you've got 3 settings. Let's zoom in here a little bit for you. You've got real-time protection, you've got cloud deliver protection, and you've got automatic sample submission. When all 3 of those are enabled, that creates a capability called Block at First Sight. So let me explain what happens. At a high level, when you download a file from the internet, or you plug in a USB drive and you drag and drop a file onto the hard disk, or you just go to access a file that's never been accessed before, the system, Windows Defender, will actually do a number of different checks on that file. It's going to do a comparison of the hash of that file and see if that hash is present in its definitions to see if it's something it's already aware of. And if it is aware of it, then it's going to immediately block it from being executed. Now, if it's not aware of it, it's going to contact our cloud service and ask the cloud service, are you aware of it? And if the cloud service is not aware of it, then the next thing it does is pretty awesome. It actually puts a lock on that file, and then it uploads that file to the cloud, i.e. this automatic sample submission here. It uploads that file to the cloud, and then it does sandboxing, detonation. It creates a VM instantaneously, executes that file as if an end user were executing it, and it looks to see what's happening. And hey, if it's a safe file, it lets you open it, and it removes that lock. If it's a not safe file, like malicious, ransomware, malware, whatever, then it's going to actually quarantine or delete that file, and all sorts of bells and whistles would go off. That's a pretty basic feature. And actually, you don't need Defender ATP for that. You could just do that using built-in Windows 10 Windows Defender. Now, the value you get with Defender ATP with something like this is the reporting that's behind it. So to demonstrate this, I have a little website here, and you can try this yourself if you like. there's a website called demo.wd.microsoft.com, and this allows you to perform demonstrations. Now, if we had all day together, I have all sorts of nasty stuff I could put on this machine and generate all sorts of alarms. But I'm just going to do a test, and one of our tests is being able to test block at first sight. So on this website here, I'm going to click on block at first sight, and I'm going to create and download a new file. Now, when I do this, I want you to watch, because it's going to happen in a blink of an eye. You're going to see block at first sight kick in, and down the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see a notification saying it's blocked it. So if the demo gods allow me to do this. Now, here, this is because Smart Screen is enabled. So I'm actually going to do something a user should never do, and I'm going to bypass Smart Screen. Now, you can set a policy to prevent this from being bypassed, but hey, this is a demo. So we're going to tell it to keep anyway. And then it's trying to download it. And block at first sight is doing its analysis right now. And in just a moment, we're going to see a notification. There it is. And check it out. It found it. And it was actually blocked from being downloaded. And you can see there it couldn't download. And if I go to my downloads folder, it would be removed. And if we launch Windows Defender and I click on protection history here, this usually takes a few moments to load. There's that block that just happened. And if we open up that block, let's zoom in here. You could see block at first sight kicked in, and it blocked it. So again, very low-hanging fruit feature in my opinion. Now what you can do is within Defender ATP here, I can go to my alerts, and I would actually see an alert for that here in just a moment. I would see an alert get populated to let me know that that just happened. And I'll talk more about alerts here in just a moment. If you're curious about how I'm doing the zooming here, that's a tool called Zoom It. It's pretty awesome, and so I want to make sure all of you guys can see this. Okay, so let's get deeper into this. Let's talk more about it. So here's something that's really awesome that Defender ATP does. It does not require you to manually sift through events. If you think about normal security or average security operations, normally a human, an admin, would have to go through each one of these events and trying to figure out, all right, what's happening? Okay, is this on any other machine? Is there anybody else in the environment that has to go? Well, we've automatically done that with this concept of incidents. And with incidents, I can have the system automatically sift through all of those alerts, automatically correlate it, and then it creates an incident. So here we have some incidents in my environment. In fact, let's change our filter to all of them. And let's sort by severity. And here I have some incidents in my environment where we've correlated alerts across different devices, and we've made it a lot easier to manage. So let's go ahead and open up this incident page. And here I can see across this incident, we have 32 different alerts that were found to be related. And then from there, we could see those alerts are across 2 different devices. And we've launched 10 different investigations automatically. So let me explain what's happening here. When you onboard your endpoints and we go to settings, we have a feature called auto remediation. This applies automation in the system. So for a lot of these threats, the system's going to automatically investigate, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment, but it's going to do an investigation just like if a human, like a SOC analyst would, and then it's going to go through and attempt to automatically remediate if my policy set to full and to remediate threats automatically. Now I could change it to semi, and then I could put this in a different device group. So if I have, the CEO's machine or my executives, I probably want to put them in a semi group just to be on the safe side. Or if I have some kind of a production server that's mission critical, right, I probably want to put that in semi. But the point being is that the system can actually automatically remediate and then notify you to say, hey, Matt, we completed our remediation. Here's what we found. So let's go back to our incidents. And actually, to do this, I'm going to show you a different view. We've recently made some investments here with incidents where we've tied it into the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And we're going to open up an incident. Now, this is new, and this is not yet available in my tenant. And we tied into the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And actually, this is not what I want to show. Hang on. Bear with me here 1 second. Here we go. This is what I want to show. Okay. There we go. So we've done some work here, and it's still being rolled out. But this allows us to map that incident to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And if you're not familiar with MITRE and the ATT&CK framework, it's basically documenting the common attacks across what we call the kill chain on how attackers get into the environment, how they land and expand, how they do harm, and then how they get out. And it's based on real-world examples. So it's pretty awesome. If you're not familiar with it, just do an internet search, and I encourage you to read about it. But this is where we looked at this incident in the environment, and we've mapped it to MITRE, and we could see that we have 5 of those alerts are related to initial access. 8 of those alerts are related to execution, persistence, so on and so forth, defense evasion. And this really helps me to focus my efforts, because a lot of times this could be daunting. I have 104 alerts. Where do I even start? Well, I probably want to start with some of the lowest, or sorry, the heavy hitters here, like defense evasion and persistence. And then as I scroll down, the system has automatically formed this storyline on what's happened here. So we could see that some users are accessing it from an anonymous Tor IP address, which is not normal. They're coming in from an infrequent country. This is being fed in from Azure Active Directory. Here we could see that somebody self-reported an email as malware or phishing. So that's pulling from Office 365. Here we notice suspicious behavior. So, a lot of times when we think about Windows Defender, we think about antivirus. It's more than just that, right? When you think about endpoint detection and response, I also want you to think about behavioral detection. Here's where it's looking at behavior on that endpoint, and somebody ran a PowerShell command that was not normal for that user, probably Barbara, and that PowerShell command probably did something a little bit out of the ordinary, and so on and so forth, and I can just drill into this. So let's go back to my lab for a moment, and let's dig into one of these incidents, and let's check out some of these alerts. So I have, before this meeting, I went out and I generated some data for you that we can, I basically attacked my lab here, and I generated some data for us to dig into and explore. So let's take a look at this first high severity alert here within this incident. Malicious credential theft tool execution detected. So when I click on the dot here, I can open up this page, and I could start to go deep into this alert. Now, if we had a full day together, I would go pretty deep into this with you and make sure you understand what's happening. But let me just call out a few things at a high level. So first and foremost, we document, again, according to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, we document the technique and what category this is in. And I could actually click on this technique, and it takes me out to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and it allows me to read more about this specific type of technique. And then I can also see examples out in the real world of where this was used. And again, that's going to help me better protect the environment. Now you can see here that we use behavioral detection to detect it, and it was on this endpoint. And then as I scroll through this, I've got this event view here of what's happened. So it looks like we have Microsoft Edge browser in the mix, and it looks like that somebody was using the Edge browser to download the Mimikatz tool. And so if I click on the bubble here, I got this file page, and check it out. Let's zoom in here. The downloaded URL is from GitHub, so I can see exactly where that file was downloaded from. And then from there, I can click on Open File Page, and this will look at that file across the environment. So we're going to come back to this page because I have some other things I'm going to show you here in just a moment. Now, we could see that that was a compressed file, right? It was a zip file. So now let's see where it was unzipped, and this is the actual executable. Now you can see, it might be kind of hard to see on your side, but you can see like a little bug there. It looks like a ladybug or maybe even a tick. That's indicating that the file is malicious. And you can see the big red lightning bolt on the left side, again, indicating it's malicious. And so if I click on the bubble here, I can see more information about this file, but let's open up the file page. And this file page gives me a number of different interesting insights about it. Over on the left side, the file hashes. These are extremely useful. We refer to these as custom indicators of compromise, and I can take these file hashes, input them into the system here and my other security systems so that I can actually prevent the spread of this file throughout the environment. So once I input those file hashes into the system, it will then go out to all the machines, and if it discovers that file hash, it will automatically start to respond. And that's how I could prevent an attack from doing more damage and more harm. We'll save that for another day because that's a little bit more in depth. But what I do want to show you, though, is a couple things over here. So VirusTotal, this is really cool. If you're not familiar with VirusTotal, it's a free kind of open source community project, and you go to virustotal.com and you can upload a file. And what VirusTotal does is it scans it across a number of different antivirus engines. And here you can see we scanned it across 73 antivirus engines, and only 54 of them detected it. And if I scroll through this list, I can see some of the antivirus engines that detected it. There's Microsoft, we detected it, among a few others. And then as I go through this, I can see antivirus engines that did not detect it, which might be cause for concern. But we've integrated that into Defender ATP, where we can actually show you right here in the console what VirusTotal found. So just to give you some additional insights into, is there anything else out there that might have detected this besides Defender ATP? And then I could tell you how many other devices in the organization actually have this, and I could drill into that and see those devices. And then I could also see where it is worldwide. So Microsoft has detected this on 149 other devices across other companies out there globally. Now, this is where it gets pretty awesome. If we click on file names, here you can see all the different versions of that file that are in the environment, executables, some renamed zips. But deep analysis is my favorite part. And what deep analysis allows me to do is I take a copy of this file, mimikatz.exe, and we're going to upload that to the Microsoft Security Graph, the cloud. And the cloud is going to put it into a sandbox, basically a VM, and it's going to execute it, and it's going to look at all the behavior that that file is trying to do. And so, for example, if this was a piece of ransomware, like let's say Wannacry, when I upload it, it's going to tell me, hey, it's trying to contact these command and control servers. It's trying to go out there and encrypt your stuff. It's trying to do all these other things. And that could be really useful, especially if you come across a file that you're not familiar with. By doing a deep analysis and uploading it, and it takes a few moments here, depending on the size of the file. By doing a deep analysis, it can help you understand more about that file to then help you be more informed to say, do we want to block this file across the environment, or do we want to allow it? And so we'll give that a few moments to cook and run. While that's running, I want to go back to our incident here for just a moment. We're going to launch another tab, and we're going to go back to that previous incident, that we've been looking at. And I've got some other nasty stuff that I've loaded in here. So here's an example of Wannacry, also goes by the WannaCrypt name. And again, this was malware that we detected. And here I can see all sorts of details about it and what was happening with that file. And again, I can see details on that file and what it looks like. Again, helping you be more informed. Is our deep analysis done yet? No, it's not. Now, if we go back to our incident here, I want to talk through a couple other things, and we're going to start to wrap up. The really awesome thing here is the automation. So yes, we have the alerts. Yes, you can manually go through this like I just showed you and really go to town on investigating it. But the system, based on my policy, can automatically investigate it. So if I go to investigations here, I can then run an investigation, I can view the investigations the system has automatically ran. And I'm going to pull up a different incident. I want to pull up one that's a little bit more fishy. So bear with me here for just a moment. Let's pull up suspicious activity. No, that's not it. Hang on one second. Let me pull up. Here, let's change our view to any for just a moment. And yeah, let's do this one here. Yeah, here we go. So here's an incident where we had this scheduled task that was created, and we found that to be abnormal. And so we launched an investigation on it automatically. And this is where I get this really interesting graph view that tells me about this investigation. Now, we launched an investigation because we saw 9 alerts. And if you look at these alerts, let me zoom in here for you. If you look at these alerts, we can see that they are suspicious. A task was created and scheduled tasks. It looks like some kind of backdoor was detected and a few other things. And if I click on the bubble next to one of these, of course, I can open up that alert. And if I click on the alert, I can then click on that file that was associated with this, and I can even see the scheduled task that it was trying to run, which can be extremely useful. So if we go to scheduled tasks here, check out the command line, there's the scheduled task that was being ran. It looks like it's trying to do something with this Trojan here. So again, really, really useful. Now, if we go back to our investigation that was being performed, the system, remember, the system was doing this automatically. And if I go to log, this tells me exactly what the system was doing. And give it a moment to load. The system was going through and doing all these different checks. It's looking to see what other machines is installed on. It's analyzing files. It's looking at processes. It's looking at memory dumps. It's doing all this for you that traditionally a human in an operations center would traditionally have to do. Now, if I click on one of these checks, over here will tell me the query that it made, and then it'll tell me the results, the output from that query. And I can export that, and I can use that if I want to do a manual analysis. Now, based on this investigation, we found some evidence, and this is where we found, let's zoom in here, we found some executables and some rogue Word documents that we just automatically quarantined. Now, that's my policy. I have it set to quarantine. You could have it to be deleted, but the system automatically did this. So that's really the value here, in my opinion, of this entire solution is the system, the product will automatically investigate and automatically remediate. So that's extremely valuable. Let's go back to our deep analysis. Oh, darn, it's still running. I really want to show that to you. That's okay. Okay, so let's move forward here and talk about a few other things before we start to wrap up. I want to show you a demo here. I have some files that are malicious. One of these files is a Word document, and I'm going to get the password for that Word document, so bear with me just one moment here. And I'm going to grab that password, and we're going to unlock this Word document. Now, this Word document has some macros in it, and this Word document has a macro that's going to prompt me and say, hey, we're going to run this demo attack scenario, so be ready. And when I click OK, it's going to drop an executable on my desktop. And as you can see, there's the executable. Where I want to drop the executable on my desktop, check it out. Block at first sight kicked in, and we immediately caught it. And in just a few moments, this executable, actually, if we do a refresh, give it a moment, it's actually going to be automatically removed from the desktop. And so, again, if I have a Word document, and this is what attackers are doing these days, right? They're embedding macros and malicious code inside a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, and they're making that part of a phishing email. If I launch that file attached to that phishing email, and it has some nasty macros doing things in it, then again, my protections, and look at that, the file got removed from the desktop. My protections can kick in and then automatically protect me. Now, let's say for a moment that this block at first sight was not enabled. Well, let's go out to another virtual machine here, and let's launch this on a machine that does not have those protections enabled. So we're going to open up that same Word document again, and we're going to click OK through the macro, and it's going to drop that executable on my desktop. And look at this, it's kicking off a command prompt. Now, what it's doing in the background is a few different things. One, it's creating a scheduled task. So here's scheduled tasks, and I can see Trojan right there is being created, and that's so it could drive persistence. And then if we open up auto runs, and we do a refresh here on auto runs, there's a, look at that, there's a entry there to have it automatic, a registry entry there to have it automatically kick off next to my login to Windows, Trojan. So again, it's the piece of malware there is creating persistence. Now, as I switch back to our portal, again, it would have seen that, and during its investigation here, It's going to automatically delete that scheduled task. It's going to automatically delete that registry entry for that run once process, and it's going to basically reverse the damage that that malicious file did. So again, really interesting stuff when you start to peel back the onion on it. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is something I think is pretty awesome, and that's something called Exploit Guard. And actually, we renamed it. It's now Exploit Protection, formerly known as Exploit Guard. That's built into Windows Defender. It's built into Windows 10 here, and here you can see if I click on App and Browser Control, this will show me the different functions of that. So let me show you what this looks like in real life and how it actually works. So I've got a little PowerShell script here that is going to do a shell code injection, and it's going to kick off a sample attack here. And in just a moment, it's going to launch. Yeah, here we go. It's going to launch Notepad, and it did a shell code injection into the notepad.exe process. And of course, Defender ATP would see this, and it would start to do its work. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable Exploit Guard. So I'm going to run a command here, actually a little script to enable Exploit Guard. And when I do that, if I switch back to Exploit Guard here, I'm going to be able to see if I jump into program settings and I go into notepad.exe, I'm going to see some boxes checked. Yeah, there we go. And that script just enabled Exploit Guard and a few of these features in Exploit Guard for the notepad.exe process. So now let's try that attack again. So let's close out of Notepad here. Let's launch that attack again. It's going to try to launch Notepad, but it won't be able to inject into the process. Look at that, it's blank. And then immediately close Notepad. And then in just a moment, I'll get a notification, a toast pop-up indicating that it found a threat and it blocked it. So that's Exploit Guard. And then if I go back to Defender ATP, that would also show up here in my incident and among my alerts. So again, protecting across the stack. And if I had all day with you, I mean, there's so many other examples I can show you, but that's pretty awesome. So let's move on here. Let's talk about a few more things and we'll start to wrap up. I want to show you this thing called advanced hunting. Now, this is going a little bit under the covers, but I want to inspire you around the art of the possible. Remember, when you onboard an endpoint into Defender ATP, it's literally sending, I mean, hundreds of thousands of pieces of telemetry to this product. And those are things like event logs. And so I could query those logs using advanced hunting. This uses KQL as the language. And so we've gone out, we've created, actually our SOC team up in Redmond has created these for you. We've created some sample queries that you can choose from here that you can kind of use to learn, or you can write your own using KQL. But let me show you some queries that I like. So here's one that's going out and it's querying the logs and it's looking for downloads across these different browsers, across Internet Explorer, Chrome, Edge, Firefox. So here I can run a query to show me all of the downloads that were happening across the environment. And so check it out. Here's where you can see that somebody on this machine has downloaded some files. There you can see where I downloaded Zoom earlier today to prepare for this presentation. So that could be really useful in doing my threat hunting. Now, if I also look at some of these sample queries, remember I talked to you earlier about Smart Screen? Well, Smart Screen can also be bypassed unless I have a policy in place to prevent that bypass. But here I can run a query that tells me who has actually bypassed Smart Screen. Here I can look at scheduled task creation. So I can run a query to show me what's tried to create a scheduled task across the environment. Again, this is how you can find that needle in a haystack, and you can write these queries and save them for future use, but they can be very useful depending on the different scenario. So I wanted to show that to you. Okay, let's take a look at something else I think is pretty awesome. And if we come in here to settings, for me personally, one of the reasons why I get so excited about this product is the integration that it has across the other Microsoft security products. And when we go into settings and advanced features, there's some integrations that at a touch of a button here automatically enables it to talk to another product. So here's an integration with Office 365 ATP. But what I want to show you is the integration with Cloud App Security. Now, this could be a totally separate presentation because there's so much here, but when I check this box here, it enables me to talk to Cloud App Security, our CASB product, and this allows me to go out and do a shadow IT discovery. So in today's age, with people not being behind the firewall and being at home, if Defender ATP is running on that endpoint, it will automatically send network telemetry to Cloud App Security, and I can see what apps are in use on that endpoint. So here I can see in my environment, we have some people using Facebook and Zoho and Zoom and Netflix. And when I click on that specific app, I can even see the users that are using that app, and then I can see what machines they're using it. And that's all with the integration here between Defender ATP and Cloud App Security. So extremely powerful. Now, one last point on that is I can come in here and I could tell it to block that app. And let's see here, if I go to Discovered Apps and I choose an app, hey, we're just gonna use Dropbox as an example. I'm gonna click on block, it's gonna block that app. And then in just a few moments, it's gonna send telemetry down to my endpoint to block that app. Whoops. So here you can see Netflix is blocked. So let's use that as an example. So I'm gonna open up a, let's open up a new tab here. And let's try to go out to Netflix. Boom, stopped my tracks. So that's Windows Defender network protection built into the OS in conjunction with Defender ATP and Cloud App Security to make that possible. And so that's extremely valuable, especially with everybody working remote. Along those same lines, we have another integration, pretty awesome integration, with our partner called Cyren, C-Y-R-E-N. And Cyren allows you to do web content filtering. And here I've signed up for a trial of their solution. Why is this not loading? Okay, there we go. And this allows me to do web content filtering. So I can come in here and create a policy. Let's call this global. Whoops. And this allows me to do dynamic content filtering based on different categories of content. And when I have this enabled, again, it's going to talk to my endpoint, and then it's going to block this on the web browser. So if I have somebody that's not behind the firewall or the proxy and they're at home, I could still do that content filtering. And for me as a security guy, I'm mostly interested in things like peer-to-peer and streaming media and download sites, and also games, because these could present actual issues in the environment. Even the hacking websites, like going out to GitHub and trying to download something like Mimikatz, it will dynamically block that. So it's pretty awesome capability there. I want to talk about just one other advanced feature here in integration, and that's with Azure Information Protection. We've done a lot of investments with this, where if you're running Defender ATP on that endpoint and you have data stored on that endpoint that has sensitive data in it, like credit card numbers or intellectual property, with this integration, we can automatically classify that data and encrypt it. And that's awesome, because then if I try to put it onto a USB drive or I try to exfiltrate that data in any way, it's encrypted with Azure Information Protection, and it was automatically done through the integration here at Defender ATP. So really, really awesome capability that just adds value to this product. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. So let's just let's go on a little bit of a speed run here, and let's just run through a few other capabilities. Evaluation and tutorials. I love this. So here's a call to action for everybody listening and watching this. Kick the tires on Defender ATP. You can download a trial of this, and you can spin up an evaluation lab. This is of no charge. It's built into the product. And when I create this evaluation lab, it actually allows me to create virtual machines running in Azure that are available to me. So I could create 3 virtual machines for 72 hours, or I think like 4 for 48 and 5 for 24. And those VMs are fully functional. They got Windows on it, they've got Office, they've got some security tools on it. And then from there, I can launch simulated attacks and kick the tires. So everything you see me do here in my environment and all the nasty stuff you see me load there, that is me running through simulations with this evaluation lab. And so we have two partners, Attack IQ and Safe Breach, that has a catalog of hundreds of different simulations you could choose from. And so here I chose two real-world simulations, APT29, and then some different real persistent methods. And I ran those on my test machine, which then kicked off some of those incidents and alerts that you saw before. So this is a great way to just try the product. I encourage really everybody to go out there and try this, because it's a great learning opportunity for one, and for two, it might be helpful. It might also inspire you around the art of the possible. And again, it's of no charge. You sign up for the trial, and it's built in, and it's just a great way to learn this product. The other thing around these simulations is if you click on the question mark and you go to simulations and tutorials, Microsoft also has its own simulations you can run through. So some of these attacks I've shown you are directly from these. So this is where I can launch a document that walks me through the entire thing and download that file. So really, really interesting, and of course that could be really valuable. Okay, we're going to start to wrap up here. This is an amazing product. There's a lot of capability. I'm not even really doing it justice because there's so much to this. I really would love to spend all day with you, but hopefully you found some value in this. And hopefully this inspired you around kind of the art of the possible. And for my SCCM guys out there, my Intune guys, consider some of those integrations that I showed you previously, and think about how that can better secure your environment. Think about attack surface reduction, or ASR rules. We didn't really get into that, but if I think about attack surface reduction and lighting those up in my environment using SCCM or using Intune or Endpoint Manager, this allows me to go through and apply what I would consider low-hanging fruit rules in my environment to block those really malicious macros and some of those other non-standard behaviors that might occur in that endpoint, and just further reduce that attack surface. So consider that. All right, I'm going to bring up a closing slide here as we start to wrap up. And I just have some favors to ask of you. I talked about the trial. Write this down, take a screenshot, bookmark it, put it in your OneNote. Please check out the documentation. There's some amazing work that our engineering teams have done around the documentation, really for all of these products. And they explain in detail how this stuff works, and they make for just great training. Consider following the blog. We post new blog articles on a weekly basis. There's always good features there, and you might even see me as a guest post there. But these explain a lot of the new capabilities, and it's just a way to stay up to date. And in fact, you could sign up for an RSS feed of both of these so you can be notified whenever new features are added to the product. Check out my YouTube channel. I do go deeper into these different features of some of these products, and that's where you can find me. But I want to thank the team here for putting on this event today. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for watching my session. I really appreciate it. And have a great rest of the event, and we'll chat later.